Nintendo has a reputation for switching things up. The company began as a card manufacturer, then made toys, and finally landed on video game consoles. But even then, they seemed like they never wanted to stay stagnant. They made the first handheld gaming system that could play games that rivaled home consoles. They messed around with things like virtual reality decades before, in all honesty, they should have. And since the Wii's release, they've aimed to redefine what exactly a home console could be. But amidst the rapidly changing and evolving landscape that is Nintendo, there's been one thing that has remained a consistent and important part of the company, and that's this guy right here. When you look at the character of Mario on paper, his popularity seems unlikely. A middle-aged Italian plumber who can jump really high. Seems like a far cry from other popular children's characters. But less than 10 years after he made his debut, Mario was more recognizable to American children than Mickey f***ing Mouse. While there could be a whole other video on the intricacies and nuance of the Super Mario brand and what made it so popular, today I'm here to talk about something a little less theoretical. Which Nintendo home console has the best Mario games? It seems like a topic that should have been covered ad nauseum by now, but in my research for this video I couldn't really find any information about this that wasn't just people stating their own personal preferences about the games. And I could do that, but let's be real, no one gives a shit whether or not I prefer Mario Power Tennis or Mario Superstar Baseball. Instead, I want to get as objective of an answer as possible. So, for today's ranking, I'm gonna find every North American home console release of a game with Mario in the title and average out all their review scores and compare them to each other, and figure out which Nintendo home console has the most critically acclaimed Mario games. 7 consoles are in play today, and honestly, you should stick around to hear the whole list because the results are actually kind of surprising. Number 7. And the bottom spot on our list, the console with the worst average Mario game scores is the Nintendo Entertainment System. Shock. Gasp. Yeah, the years have not been too kind to the console that started it all. While many still respect the NES for what it meant for Nintendo and the video game market overall, its games haven't aged horribly well. Sure, some still hold up, even by today's standards, but the jank is extra jank. The NES has the least amount of Mario games on this list, largely because this was before Nintendo started making a Mario game for every single genre. The only Mario spin-off on the NES that still exists today is Dr. Mario. The bulk of the games are made up of the core Mario platformers, which all still have good scores. In my opinion, games like Super Mario Bros. 3 still hold up by modern standards. And I know the American Super Mario Bros. 2 isn't the real Super Mario Bros. 2, but f*** it, I still like this game. I really don't have any issues with this core trilogy, and I can still get just as much enjoyment from them as I did when I was a kid. The NES really got brought down by a couple of these semi-educational games like Mario is Missing and Mario's Time Machine. Both these games bared little resemblance to the gameplay style featured in other Mario games at the time, and were also made basically without any input from Nintendo. In total, there were 7 North American releases with Mario in the title. The worst scoring game is Mario is Missing with an average of 49, and the best scoring is Super Mario Bros. 3 with an average of 91. A couple things to keep in mind here. There's a bit of recency bias going on. Unfortunately, there isn't enough review data from the era when the NES was a modern console, so I had to go based on what people are saying about the games now, which naturally means they might skew slightly negative. But the games that were amazing are still reflective of that in their scores. Mario Bros. 3 is actually in the top 10% of all games on this list, so it's not like the games are being viewed negatively just because they were on the NES. The other point is, isn't this kind of a good thing? I mean, video games are one of the few mediums that can arguably get objectively better over time because of their reliance on technological innovation. If the NES still ranked higher than most of Nintendo's consoles, wouldn't that mean the company has failed to innovate? The 40-year-old console ranking the lowest on this list means Nintendo has consistently improved over time. I understand many people have nostalgic and fun memories of the NES, but its ranking on this list isn't a slight against the console, rather, it's a point in favor of Nintendo's progress. The NES averages out with an overall score of 70. Number 6. The Wii U. Yeah, this kind of goes against the point I just made. Nintendo's second most modern console ranking so low on this list ain't a great sign. But I'm not really in a position to speak about the Wii U. I actually never owned one. I played a bunch of games at friends' houses and stuff, and I've played a few enough to speak with some amount of authority, but it would be disingenuous for me to speak about the console without having owned one myself. So I'm gonna throw it over to my buddy Kardino.
Hey there, the Wii U might be one of Nintendo's most interesting consoles because it not only gave us some of the greatest games in the Mario series, but also the worst. Now, some people might assume that the gamepad was the main reason for this, like how the Wii Remote got in the way of a lot of its games. But actually, except for maybe Paper Mario, the gamepad was either used pretty well or didn't really impact the game at all. No, the main reason for the lower scoring games is that they were just not good. The best, or technically the worst, example of this would probably be Mario Tennis Ultra Smash. Oh, it certainly smashed alright, right into the bottom of the list with an abysmal score of 55. On the other end, Mario 3D World, for as controversial as it was, still met with a 91, making it the highest scoring Mario game on the console. But yeah, there's no denying that with so many of the Mario titles here being mixed at best, the score was dragged down a bit. Honestly, the biggest issue here was probably that a lot of the games felt kind of repetitive and bare bones. For example, take New Super Mario Bros. U. Now, even if this game is objectively good, you need to remember that this was the fourth game in a series that had essentially become one of the most vanilla experiences in the industry. Only this time, with the genius of the Wii U gamepad, your little brother can now use the touchscreen to place floating blocks and feel like a waste of space. Now, this is what I call next-gen gaming. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum, one of the best games on the system was Mario Kart 8. It brought the series into HD, it had some banger anti-gravity courses and DLC, and even gave us 200cc after a free update. Mario Maker was also amazing. I know Mario Maker 2 is out now, and everyone's pretty much forgotten about this version now, but just trust me on this when I say that at the time, it was really exciting to make your own Mario levels using a gamepad. Here's the thing though, I just went through all of the good Mario games on the Wii U. Besides Mario Kart 8, Mario Maker, and 3D World, the other 8 Mario games were controversial at best. While I personally haven't played it, I'm fairly confident in saying that Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games is as boring as the name is long. Anyway, just to recap, out of the 11 games on the console, the highest score was Mario 3D World's 91, and the lowest was Mario Tennis Ultra Smash's 55. With such a diverse list of Mario games, the average score comes out to 74. Not terrible, but certainly nothing impressive. Just like my life.
Thanks, Kardino. I'm gonna leave a link to his channel down in the comments. Check it out after you finish this video. Number 5. The Super Nintendo. I was surprised by this. While most agree that a lot of NES games haven't aged well, generally everyone still holds the Super Nintendo in high regard even by modern standards. I'm one of those people. The SNES was the first console I ever owned. I learned how to read so I can understand what the was going on in Super Godzilla. The lowest ranking game is Mario is Missing. Yeah, the game was a multi-platform release, so it screwed over both the NES and the SNES. The console's overall score also got brought down by a bunch of these Mario's early years games. That's another reason why these older consoles skew a little bit more negatively. This was a time when Nintendo wasn't as protective over their IP and the Mario brand. As far as I could tell, Nintendo didn't really have much to do with the actual development of these games. Obviously, if we only counted games that were developed by Nintendo or as a collaboration with them, all these consoles would probably have closer scores. But that's not how the rules work. Nintendo let this happen, and the SNES has got to pay for it. But the flip side of that is that this console contains a huge amount of unquestionably classic Mario games. Super Mario All-Stars was a collection of the NES Mario Bros. Games with a new code of 16-bit paint, and even featured the first official North American release of the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2. Super Mario World, in my opinion, is the best 2D Mario platformer of all time. Yoshi's Island, which is technically called Super Mario World 2, so it counts, ended up starting a spin-off franchise of its own. We also got a better idea of how versatile the Mario brand could be, and we got our first Mario Kart, our first Mario RPG, and even got the home console debut of Wario, but that's a Japanese exclusive, so we're not counting it. Interestingly, the Super Nintendo has the highest amount of top-scoring games out of all the consoles in this ranking, with 4 titles scoring above 90 points. The top-scoring game is a tie between Super Mario World and Super Mario RPG, both averaging a score of 93 points. Although this console is ranking low on this particular list, it's not exactly because these games don't hold up. Like I said, if we only counted the games Nintendo actually worked on, the Super Nintendo would probably rank significantly higher. What this outcome shows is that Nintendo was still at a point when they were experimenting with their IP and hadn't quite figured out where something like Mario belongs and where it doesn't. In total, there were 12 Super Nintendo games with Mario in the title, and the console averages out with a score of 75. Number 4. The Wii. The console that redefined Nintendo as a company. Codename Revolution, it took the world by storm and became a cultural phenomenon, bringing in a gigantic audience that had previously never showed any interest in gaming. Grandmas were kicking ass in Wii bowling, motion controls invented completely new ways to interact with a game, and the Wii would end up having over 100 million units sold. For a moment, Nintendo was on top of the world, even exceeding the cultural relevancy they had back in their heyday during the NES. And all that got them squarely in the middle of this list. Yeah, for as important as the Wii was for Nintendo, it really doesn't have that many outstanding games compared to the cultural storm it created. While it doesn't have any egregiously bad Mario games like Mario is Missing, a lot of these games are just kinda lukewarm. Just about half of the Mario games on the Wii had average scores in the 70s. Not horrible, but not outstanding. The most notable Mario games from this era are probably Galaxy 1 and 2. Many consider these to be the best 3D Mario platformers ever made, but this wasn't a great time for Mario spin-offs. Mario Party 8 and 9 are some of the worst reviewed games in the entire series, criticized for their use of motion controls and abandonment of the core Mario Party formula. Games like Mario Kart Wii and Super Paper Mario received above average scores, but were still generally thought to be inferior to their predecessors. Generally, the overall trend here seems to be that the core Mario series was reaching new critical heights, while the spin-off games were generally thought to be declining in quality when compared to the previous generation. The lowest scoring game is Mario Party 8 with an average of 63, and the highest scoring is Super Mario Galaxy 2 with an average of 94. Both Mario Galaxies are the only Mario Wii games to score above a 90. I think the big issue here comes from Nintendo and their second and third party developers' over-reliance on motion controls. While these were novel for the time, I personally have a hard time going back to some of these games and playing with some pretty janky motion controls at times. Also, guess what Mario series got the most representation on the Wii? It was Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. Yeah, there were 3 of these fucking games on the Wii. To me, these games reek of Wii-era motion-controlled garbage. Look, they're not the worst thing in the world, but if I had to show someone one game to give as an example for where Nintendo went wrong with the Wii, it would probably be this. Obviously, there were games on the Wii that made great use of the motion controls, but I feel like more often than not, they were shoved into games that probably would have been better off without them. I don't think it's a coincidence that the 2 highest ranking Mario games are relatively minimal with their motion controlled gimmicks. In total, there were 14 Wii games with Mario in the title, and the console averaged out with a score of 77.78. And yeah, there's a reason why I didn't round up this time, and I'll explain that when we get to the next console. Number 3. The Nintendo Switch. Nintendo's current console, a hybrid between a handheld and a home console that has been taking the world by storm. It's already outsold the NES, and many speculate that it will eventually outsell the Wii and officially become Nintendo's best-selling home console of all time. Besides the actual hardware success, the Switch era of Nintendo is important for the company because of how it's evolved its decades-old franchises. Games like Super Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild honored the legacy of their respective franchises while also not being afraid to discard tradition and bring these series into new places. The Switch pulled Nintendo out of this cultural grave it had dug for itself during the Wii U era, and once again made the company a competitive player in the home console market. It's kind of Nintendo Jesus. Because of that, I honestly thought the Switch would rank higher. Don't get me wrong, it still made the top 3, but given how the Switch has been kind of seen as a course correction after the turn Nintendo took starting with the Wii, I would have assumed that the games would have ranked significantly higher. Super Mario Odyssey was a critical darling and is my personal favorite 3D Mario platformer. There's a pretty solid argument to be made that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the best Mario Kart of all time, and Mario & Rabbids Kingdom Battle is one of the best new Mario spin-offs in generations. But a lot of the other games haven't gotten the same treatment. Games like Mario Tennis Aces, Super Mario Party, and the Origami King, while all considered to be improvements over their predecessors, are not exactly the return to form that they were initially thought to be. New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe is just kinda bland, and Super Mario 3D All-Stars is one of the most low-effort releases Nintendo has put out in a long time. The lowest rated game on the Switch is Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020, averaging out with a score of 69. Oh Jesus, there's so many jokes I can make here, but I don't want YouTube to flag this video. And to the surprise of no one, the highest ranking is Super Mario Odyssey with an average score of 93. Looking at this data, there's some really interesting revelations. Despite the Switch largely being seen as a repudiation of the software design philosophy during the Wii era, the actual numbers are strikingly similar. There's games like Galaxy and Odyssey that are widely acclaimed across the board, then a handful of titles like New Super Mario Bros. Wii or Mario & Rabbids that received above average scores, but the majority of the games are just kind of thought of as meh. Not horrible, but not spectacular either. So while big titles like Odyssey actually make an attempt to move the franchise forward, a lot of the secondary Mario games seem to be stuck in the same traps that they were in during the Wii era. As of the recording of this video, the Switch has 12 games with Mario in the title and averages out with a score of 78.08. Normally, I round up or down, but the Wii and the Switch scores were so close that I had to keep the decimals. Maybe I'm making a big deal out of nothing, but I kind of find it really fascinating how close these two scores are. Granted, the Switch is still getting new games, so in the future its place may go up or down. Number 2. The Nintendo motherfucking GameCube. This might be a surprise to some, or an inevitability to others. The GameCube is Nintendo's second worst selling console of all time. It was destroyed by the PS2 and the original Xbox, and its failure is largely considered to be what set Nintendo on the path of actually innovating the console itself. It's mostly forgotten by Nintendo nowadays, and with the exception of a handful of titles, it isn't possible to play GameCube games legally on any modern console. It's a damn shame too, because the games Nintendo made during the GameCube era are largely considered to be some of their most creative and groundbreaking. Seriously, I don't think it's a coincidence that despite the GameCube selling pretty badly, its fans are some of the most vocal subset of Nintendo followers. Sorry, I don't mean to simp too hard for the GameCube, but yeah, I love this thing. That creative innovation was definitely apparent in the Mario games that came out during this era. Super Mario Sunshine introduced FLUDD and really changed how Mario traversed a 3D world. While somewhat controversial at the time, people have grown to appreciate the game and the creative risk it took. Mario Kart Double Dash had you control two different characters, one driving and the other handling items. Mario stepped into the world of baseball, soccer, and dancing. While series like Mario Tennis and Golf didn't necessarily innovate, they were all generally considered to be solid improvements and built on the games that came before them. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door built on everything that Paper Mario 64 had and, in my opinion, improved on every aspect. Perhaps the series that kind of got the short end of the stick was Mario Party. While I still love the GameCube Mario Party games, they did release a lot of them on the system without really improving on what came before. Its lowest scoring game is Mario Party 7 with a score of 71. Its highest scoring is Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door with an average of 89. Interestingly, the GameCube is the only console on this list that's highest scoring game wasn't a core Mario platformer, with The Thousand-Year Door scoring just 1 point better than Mario Sunshine. Just a side note, Nintendo Proper Mario RPG was the most critically acclaimed Mario game in 2 separate generations. Can you guys either make up with Square Enix or send Kensuke Tanabe to cognitive behavioral therapy so he can get rid of his irrational fear of experience points? Please? We really need another Mario RPG. In total, there were 12 GameCube games with Mario in the title, and the console averages out with a score of 79. Number 1. I know I should put in a drum roll or something to build tension, but at this point I'm assuming everyone knows what the number 1 console will be since, it's the only one I haven't mentioned on this list. Nintendo's first dip into 3D gaming, while falling behind in sales when compared to the PlayStation, is still fondly remembered by many gamers. Time even named it Machine of the Year in 1996. While its use of cartridges and strict licensing policies turned away a lot of developers that had stuck with Nintendo through the NES and SNES eras, the console still proved to be a decent success, and many of its games set some foundations of 3D game design that still hold true today. To be honest, I was pretty surprised to see the N64 top this list. A lot of the games from the early 3D era haven't aged terribly well, and I assumed that would have knocked down the console a few points. That may be true for some games, but a lot of the Mario titles on the N64 are still fondly remembered. Nintendo seemed to learn its lessons about letting other developers use their IP, and it was this generation that the company started to be a lot more strict with how people other than their in-house development team use the Mario brand. Super Mario 64 basically set the standard for what a 3D platformer is, and in my opinion, no other platformer in this generation topped it. Mario Kart 64 was a dorm room classic when I was in college. The 3 Mario Party games on this console are probably the best in the entire franchise, even if the first one destroyed your controller. Paper Mario took the reins from Mario RPG and started one of the most beloved Mario spin-off series. While some games might be better than others, it's actually pretty hard to argue that any of the Mario games on the N64 are outright bad, which is something you can definitely make the case for on pretty much any other Nintendo home console. Its lowest ranking game is Dr. Mario 64 with a score of 73, and its highest is Super Mario 64 with a score of 93. I think part of the reason this console ranks so high on this specific list is that a lot of the Mario spin-offs got their start on the N64. Paper Mario, Mario Golf, Mario Party, and Mario Tennis all debuted on this console. While the mainline Mario games retain consistently high scores across console generations, most of these Mario spin-offs rank significantly higher on the N64 when compared to their most recent iterations. Those spin-off games scoring higher are really the main reason this console came out on top. In total, there were 9 Mario games on the N64, and the console averages out with a score of 84. In the end, what can we learn from this? We need more Mario RPGs, Mario spin-offs are getting worse, and Mario and Sonic seems to exist solely to bring the overall scores of the consoles on this list down. Something to think about also. Don't be upset if your favorite console ranked lower than you think it should. Remember, this is based on a narrow selection of games, and the score differences really aren't that far from each other. There's only a 14-point difference between the NES and the N64. In the end, all of these consoles have some of the most critically acclaimed and important titles in gaming history, so there really aren't any losers here. Let me know where you guys would personally rank these consoles, and thanks for watching.